Well, good morning, everybody. Start off today. Let's look at the last 24 hours of precipitation because across most of the country, things were quite dry. We are watching the upper level low we've been talking about for a while that has plagued the Great Lakes finally start to make its way out. But interestingly enough, when you look back, even over the last 24 hours, quite a bit of this precipitation here fell as snow. Looking at the last 3 days, of course, we had the very heavy snows that came in just south of Lake Superior, but a lot of little snow squalls that hit parts of Indiana and Ohio, and then quite a bit of heavy snow right here along Lake Erie. We did also see that coming off of Lake Michigan earlier in the week, that lake effect snow band. Well, the pattern change we've been discussing is about to begin, and I'm starting to see some evidence of it in the satellite imagery from last night. In the Pacific Northwest, now remember, what we're going to be watching for is a shift in the winds to be coming out of the northwest. You see, they've been tucked under a large ridge and flowing out of the south, so we've actually been watching the smoke really advect or move north. But if you take a look here, in addition to some of the high cloud pattern, look at how the smoke, especially in this fire right here in parts of Idaho last evening, just as the sun was setting, well, the top of that smoke plume was getting blown this direction, and the smoke was getting blown over parts of the Columbia Basin, and that's indicative of the overall change. Now, by the time we get into Friday, I'm going to be watching for some very strong winds to be coming out of the west across much of the western United States, and this is going to initially be quite a problem. In fact, we're going to be seeing here in parts of the western plains the risk for wildfires. The All Hazards weather map is starting to show that. This whole region and through here has early this morning, already been issued red flag warnings. So the good news about the precipitation coming in is it will start to clean out the air where we still have the air quality alerts here in the Pacific Northwest. It will shut down some of these fires, but it will also be bringing in some very cold weather and very wet weather and quite a bit of snow into the mountains. I'll show you more about that in a moment. The other big feature we're watching is the cold air finally exit east. Early this morning, this is our all hazards map, and you can see several states with freeze warnings and frost advisories getting down into parts of Florida. On the backside, this is all fog we're concerned about here. Now, you do notice there's a large gap from parts of West Virginia, North and South Carolina. I'm not sure why the National Weather Service maybe was trying to update this at this point, but it's pretty chilly in through this area as well. So let's take a look at these two different features really quickly here. The first is the winds. Let me take it back here. What I'm watching for on Friday again, see these strong winds coming through parts of the west. This is eventually going to move over the top of the Rocky Mountains and begin a process we call leaf cyclogenesis. So it helps there's a large shortwave, but the actual physical process of taking the airflow over the mountains as it's spinning cyclonically allows it to stretch coming down into the plains, and that helps induce more spin in the atmosphere and produces a quickly developing low pressure system. So we see it here on Saturday taking shape. Let's go to Saturday evening. It's all happening right in through this area. Strong winds throughout the Great Basin in the west. Strong winds coming out of the south, transporting moisture from the Gulf of Mexico into this low that takes shape right here on Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and Sunday evening. Now, as we discussed, we're expecting around this low to have very strong synoptic scale winds, 30 to maybe 50 miles an hour. And this is just the first of two systems, this one moving its way quickly toward Ontario, that we'll be watching over the next 7 or 8 days. Now, on the other side of this, the early morning temperatures here, we saw 32 degrees down here almost to the Gulf Coast. We've got some 33s in Florida and a lot of places along the mid-Atlantic into the Carolinas that are already touching a frost before the sun rises. But this cold air is on its way out. What's interesting is just to take a look at the 7-day frost forecast map from this morning's NDFD runs. It includes two different things: the cold air that's currently leaving, and then the big shot at cold air that's going to be following the next system. But what we're going to see across the country is a pretty wild ride on temperatures. So let's go talk about that. First thing is today. This is Thursday's high temperatures. We're already back in the 80s in the plains, and we're going to even see warmer temperatures coming in on those strong south winds. The cold air clears by Friday for much of the East Coast, and a lot of heat builds into the midsection of the country as the first of these several systems comes into the Pacific Northwest. This is Saturday's temperatures. You notice that some of the temperatures here are 20 to 25 degrees above normal for this point in October as we start to reach into the mid-80s. But you can see the strength of that front as the low begins to gather right here, such that by Sunday the contrast will be very stark across the plains. We'll be in the western Corn Belt, mid-80s, And then you come over here to Wyoming, and we're talking about highs struggling to get out of the 40s. So this is a very strongly forced system with its main front. So when does that cold air start to come back to the Midwest and the plains? It'll be Tuesday. That's when we're really behind the system as it moves through Ontario. The cold air really sinks behind this. But it's going to be on a pretty volatile ride, and you'll see it shoot right back up again ahead of the next system. Now, our high-res models are starting to pick up on this. This starts pretty early this morning, but we're going to see the first system leaving. That's the cutoff low. There it goes through parts of Quebec and Ontario. And then other than that, we're just watching a low off the coast, but it's not yet bringing precipitation in through midday Friday. What we're going to be watching for Friday night is the onshore flow. So here you see it bringing snow into the Cascades, into northern Rockies. Could get some rain and possibly some snow showers depending on elevation in the Columbia Basin. This starts to fill into the Snake River Valley by overnight hours Friday into Saturday morning. And it will be Saturday morning that I'll watch this moving out of Wyoming coming into the midsection of the country. What we're going to be pulling together are three things. This trough here, that's the main event. This cutoff low here, and possibly some of the cyclonic flow from that tropical system down there off of the coast of Mexico. Watch these things come together. So let's play through Friday. We've already seen through Saturday morning. So we've seen so far with the high-res models this event. Now notice, the latest model, as one system enters, has the latest model forecast, has the cutoff low, that was just off the southeast coast, now no longer really plaguing North Carolina. What it's doing, I'm keep my eye over here, is really bringing in some showers along parts of coastal New England. Now, I know a lot of you are watching this system in the midsection of the country, so let's go back and watch it again. You'll see the least cyclogenesis happening right here. This is now Sunday morning, 7 a.m. And as this low takes shape on Sunday afternoon, it's going to really continue to draw on the very warm conditions out of the south, and we'll keep a close eye right here on the risk for severe storms. The backside's got some snow, and we're going to take a look at those snowfall amounts in a moment. But this low lifts. The tilt of the trough is like this, what lifts on off toward Ontario, bringing some very wet weather to the Dakotas, the upper Midwest, and it will drag a front through the Midwest right here by Monday night. We're going to watch out for that in terms of severe weather. Now, remember a moment ago when I pointed out the three features? Well, this is what's left of that tropical system, and there will be some cyclonic spin, a cutoff low moving over Mexico at this point. So you see that by the time we get out into Tuesday morning, afternoon, and evening, the main front tries to clear through the East Coast by Tuesday evening, and you start to see better chances of rain right here coming out of Texas. That is that second wave. Now, the third wave is here. By Wednesday morning next week, going out to Thursday, this is our second big system coming into the midsection of the country. A lot of details are yet to be resolved on this, but this is what we do know. Total accumulated precipitation, let's just play this out and stop it on Sunday morning. Or let's go to Sunday evening. There we go. Sunday evening, 7 p.m. A lot of heavy precip coming into the west. Very clear where that's coming in here. If you are in the midsection of the country through the southeast up into New England, you've got several more days, all the way till Sunday, at least in the Midwest, where we have more opportunity to get harvest done. The window closes pretty tightly, though, in through this region by Sunday night through Monday. What's disappointing about the position and timing of this low is that it appears to be drawing that moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico, but not drawing it sufficiently west enough to be bringing precipitation to this part of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska, a region that desperately needs more of that precipitation. Now, overall, for the next 7 days, I want to make a point that the GFS model is drawing the cutoff low into the main event, that deeper trough, rather than leaving it stranded to rain over Texas. And that's why the GFS, represented in these colors, is a much wetter forecast for parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, and Illinois than the European model is. The European model, leaving them separate, is wetter in Texas and then wetter farther to the north. The GFS, much wetter here. We'll talk more about that in tonight's in-depth video. But the bigger picture is this. The systems coming through over the next couple of weeks like to follow this trajectory. And the result of that trajectory is to not dig systems far enough to the south to really return a lot of precipitation into a key area. Now, the reason why I'm calling this the key area is because we've had this discussion going for a while about how long it took the drought to take shape here and its depth around the Mississippi watershed and what it's doing to the water levels along the Mississippi, which are still extremely low. And you've probably heard a lot about the barge traffic issues. It took us about 45 or 50 days to get into this. So we probably need 45, maybe up to 60 days of more routine precipitation to revive the soil moisture, get the water into the tributaries, into the main rivers like the Missouri, the Mississippi, and the Ohio, and all of their big tributaries to start to fill this back in, which means the barge traffic issues we've been hearing about will likely continue for a while. Now, I mentioned snow. Let's come back to that for just a second here. I want to show you what the 0Z run was doing. Now, it's very difficult to estimate at this point what to expect in the Cascade and Northern Rockies. I will say that there's up to 2 inches of liquid equivalent in that, which means we could be talking at snowfalls to totals, especially at higher elevations, over a foot to maybe 2 feet. But you do notice that some here in the western plains getting up into Montana, stretching through Manitoba and parts of Saskatchewan, there's the shot at some decent snows. Just to kind of give you the probability, we're looking here at about a 50 to 70% chance of seeing 3 inches of snow in this area, maybe getting into parts of the western Dakotas and Nebraska. It won't likely last long because we'll rebound in temperatures about 3 days after this event occurs, but I just want to keep you up to date on that. Lastly, let's look at the longer term temperatures. So here's the cold air coming into the west. It will have the shot at cold air that comes through the midsection of the country. There it is. But we're going to revive relatively quickly as the next system starts to draw in more of that warmer air. So while this pattern is doing this, we're going to see repeated shots at cold air being replaced quickly by warm air in the midsection of the country. What that translates into is a volatile temperature pattern to finish October and start November. Now, in tonight's in-depth video, we'll have new long-range guidance. We'll also talk a lot about what's going on in South America, specifically Argentina, where as a country, right now, they're on average sitting at about 6 inches below normal in terms of precipitation. So we need to see if that drought situation is going to resolve itself as one hemisphere is planting and another one is harvesting. So we'll talk soon. Appreciate your attention and getting up here early with me this morning to talk through the weather. Have a good one.